let's get to this main story that we want to talk about today. So I'm just going to read the headline here. Europe announces Digital Services Act. And I think, Stephanie, you asked the question, why can't the U.S. figure this stuff out? So,
Hey.
You put this in the rundown. I'll let you go ahead and tell the story.
So basically, what is happening? I mean, the EU has been really they have tried to be, I'll put it that way, because I have some thoughts on that too, but they have at least attempted to be forward thinking on protecting their citizens as it relates to the internet in general, but social media platforms specifically. Last year or a couple years ago, the GDPR came out, the General Data Protection Regulation came out that sort of tried to put a clamp on how much data they could collect from individuals on the internet, and social media companies could collect from individuals and impose penalties and things like that for that. And now, well, actually about a month ago, the Digital Markets Act came out in the EU, which started trying to put some bumpers and some barriers around unfair competition amongst those platforms. Kind of sounded very net neutrality leaning to me with the Digital Markets Act, but it was basically designed to protect small businesses on the web and make sure that these larger companies weren't having this unfair advantage. And now they've just released the Digital Services Act, which it got passed by the EU, the European Union, on Saturday. This is supposed to force tech companies to take greater responsibility for their content, to remove illegal content and goods more quickly, some algorithm transparency, and stricter action on the spread of misinformation. So we'll see. Like I said, at least they're doing something. Is how I feel about this, because we ain't doing nothing right now. We can't even get Section 230 repealed to try to hold these companies in any way responsible or liable for the content on their platforms. Just we ain't got nothing. We just out here blind, flying blind. Our internet is just a wild west of everybody doing whatever they feel is right in their minds at the time. And at least the European Union is attempting to do something to try to rein these companies in, because it really is out of control at this point. What they can do, what they're capable of, and the fact that they can do it without, with impunity, basically, is just really kind of ridiculous at this point.
Well, like your boy Mitt Romney said, corporations are people too,
I
and that's
guess.
typically, not typically, that's how companies are allowed to do business, specifically in the United States, is because this whole ideal of free market, this whole idea of democracy, and how we define democracy today. It's if you have enough influence, i.e., if you have enough capital, you can influence things to your benefit. And corporations have jumped on that. And that's how we get things to where they are today, between, your boy Ajit Pai back in the day, how he let these telecom companies run rampant, and
that
how the
clown.
whole net neutrality thing, people were arguing up and down about that. Something as simple as that.
Right.
It's like
You
our
would think it
government
would
was
be
like,
common sense,
right. Our
but
government
no.
was like, let's hear both sides,
Right.
and that's how we are today. So it's almost like, again, going back to my original thing about Twitter, it's like, we are looking for somebody to blame for all of this stuff. And it's like, I think we, again, in a perfect world, I think we have to realize our control, our power, our influence a little bit more, and use that more actively and proactively. That's the only way I see the things changing in the United States. Again, that's good wishing. The whole idea of our democracy is we elect people who are going to speak on our behalf, but then the corporations swoop back in and say, "Let me tell you what we really want you to do," and that
Listen,
all gets kind of muddy.
the golden
I think,
rule. He who has
Three
the
yeah.
golden
words:
rule.
campaign finance reform.
And
That
who's going
But
to
part.
do
it's
that?
no
How?
one's,
Right.
because
Nobody.
both sides
Nobody.
don't want that, really.
Right.
Both sides really don't
Nobody.
want that done. Um,
Because it's
so
all the stuff Stephanie mentioned. The EU at the government level, they're about this is what's going to do, and I don't see our government doing that. I just don't
At
see it.
all. And I just want to
So
run through they have a list of obligations that the companies have to adhere to there that just makes so much sense. And it's like these are just common sense type things. So over there, the companies won't be able to do targeted advertising based on an individual's religion, sexual orientation, or ethnicity. Minors cannot be subject to targeted advertising either. Dark patterns, which are confusing or deceptive user interfaces designed to steer users into making certain choices, will be prohibited. So the idea that Cambridge Analytica could happen again, this would probably cover that. You think you're taking a fun personality test, meanwhile you giving information to somebody who's
mhm.
manipulating the whole ass
That
2016
was the
election.
worst.
Um, and then large online platforms like Facebook will have to make the working of their recommender algorithms more transparent to users. Hosting services and online platforms will have to clearly explain why they have removed illegal content and give users ability to appeal. The largest online platforms will have to provide key data to researchers to provide more insight into how online risks evolve. Online marketplaces must keep basic information about sellers on their platform to track down individuals selling illegal goods or services. And large platforms will also have to introduce new strategies for dealing with misinformation during crises. So,
And
they tried to be pretty explicit about what their expectations are. The only hope we have, I think, at this point, is that we will get the residual effects of this
right, similar
because
to the
that's what tends
GDPR
to
thing,
happen.
right?
Yeah, it's like
Yeah,
once they make them do something over there, they only want to do it once. So we sort of get some of that residual effect.
right. And
Yeah,
all
that
those things you mentioned, Stephanie. You know what that in my head as a company that said, "Oh, uh, more investment, more overhead, more
Yeah,
costs," and I
absolutely.
don't want those
less
And less
costs.
profits.
revenue. And less
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 revenue. Yeah.
profits.
profits.
Yeah.
I mean, you asked the question, why can't we get down with this? Because companies are saying, well, if we do this, I'm just gonna say it's gonna cost us $100,
Hmm.
but it only costs us $50 to get a lobbyist to keep it from happening.
Yep.
$50 is less than 100.
Yep.
Therefore, this is why we do it. Um, and it really is that simple. It comes
Yeah.
down to dollars and cents. And when you think about it from a company's perspective, they kind of have to. The company, like I said, I'm not trying to say a company is a person. I know our laws kind of say it is, but that's gonna be it. A company is a company. They have shareholders, and
Hmm.
shareholders want you to maximize their investment. You need to make as much money from me as you possibly can. So from a shareholder standpoint, and like I said, I'm not getting into activist shareholders. I'm not getting into companies that are saying that they are, we're a green. I'm just talking about generally companies like to make as much money as they
And yeah,
legally
that's
and
just the
sometimes
black and white
illegally
of it.
can.
Yeah, the black
It's
and
just
white of
it's,
it.
it's just a numbers game for them. So if I can spend $1 million on lobbying to get this law to go the way that I want it to go, as compared to allowing the law, which is better for my customers and better for the people, but it's going to cost me money in the end. It's going to cost me more than $1 million that it cost me in lobbying, expenses. Then we're going to go with the lobbying expenses. It is just poor math. It's like, how
Yeah,
do I
yeah,
make more money?
it's
This is
big,
how I
it's
make it.
business. This is business, it's not
So,
personal. The
so what's
only thing
happening?
Go ahead.
I was going to say, so what's happening in the EU, and you both said this GDPR. They did this thing over there, and literally when you looked at that, I remember working on people's websites that had to fix some things. It was not an insignificant thing that you had to do to get all this fixed. These companies said, yeah, we're not going to do that again. So let's just go ahead. And you had two things happening: the news of what was happening in the UK, and I should say the EU, was getting over here to us. Okay, well, I don't want to be tracked like that. I want this to work this way. I want these things to happen for me. And then you also have, well, we've already done the work. Why literally have to have two code bases? Let's just fix
Exactly.
this for everyone. And we're going to kind of roll with that. And then we'll go ahead and maybe get to the point where we actually put that into law here.
But see what happens in to Terrance's point, like where am I pointing? About citizen apathy, because that's basically what you're saying, Terrence, when you say,
Mhm.
we got to do a better job of, awareness and stuff like that. It's just a matter of citizen apathy at this point. The residual effect we got from that GDPR stuff was that now every website we go to, the pop-up happens that says,
Ugh,
do
and I
you
gotta
want
click these.
cookies? Are you,
Yeah, right.
or if you don't, here are your preferences.
Who
How
wants to
many
do
of us
that?
can actually say we went and set the
Mhm.
preferences that we said accept all cookies, and we kept shopping on Nordstrom.com. You know what I mean? And so it does kind of, so and a couple of one of the other articles I was looking at for this made mention of the fact that GDPR was groundbreaking legislation, and it's great that legislators are paying attention to this, but hasn't really had any teeth,
Right.
because if all you're doing is putting a pop-up on the website, and and everybody's just ignoring it anyway.
Or if I want to do something about it, I got to jump through all these hoops. I got to go to the
Exactly.
website.
Yeah.
I got to create an
I
email. I got
gotta
to
I gotta
request
go to
this, and I got to.
I gotta look at every data point they
Right.
collect and say, yes,
Mm.
I want, you can use that, but you can't use that, but you can't use that. You know what I mean? They make it intentionally difficult. And so then does it even matter, and is it even
Right.
effective anyway? So
Right.
And
it's that we back down the rabbit hole in the matrix again anyway.
this is where
Damn it,
government
internet.
can be good for the people. If you really think about what government is supposed to do,
It's supposed to do.
it's supposed to do.
Mhm.
These are the kind of things. You've got all of these EULAs that are so difficult to understand that, okay, I just want to play Candy Crush. Please, can you just give me one button I can click on so I can
Right.
get past all of that? Well, you know what? The government's job is to, well, you know what? All of that
Make them
stuff that
work for their
most people
money.
aren't reading, we're going to look out for them and say, hey, company, you need to pull this out, or you need to do this different. That's what the EU is much better at than we are. Now,
Right.
there's the other side of that. There's some EU stuff. It's like, okay, that's ridiculous. For real, this is what you're doing. But usually
Mhm.
it is not anti citizen.
Citizen.
Usually even when it's ridiculous stuff, it is in the best interest of the
Mhm.
citizens within the EU. We
Yeah.
don't always get that over
No,
here.
South Park.
I
Right
would go
or
so
left, we
far
don't
as to
always
say
get
we
that over here.
rarely get that here.
Right.
Yeah.
I would
South
go so
Park.
far as to say we rarely.
South Park has a really good episode on end user license agreements and what happens, or what when you click agree on an end user license agreement,
Mhm.
what the company can actually do as a result of that. You have to look
Take
that
no
up. It's
firstborn.
it's gross and it's weird, but
Kenny
it
does
is
die.
a if you read that, if you watch that, you might that might just scare you into saying, let me read this a little bit
Let
closer.
me read it.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And the one thing I did star about this whole thing, and that I truly appreciate about how the EU approaches this, whether it's ultimately effective or not, or whatever, they, their major point in this was, the greater the size of the company, the greater responsibility that company
Sure.
has. So
That's
they will
just
be
common sense.
fining on a
Mhm.
scale that doesn't happen, because there was just something here, and I was trying to Google it and remember it. There was just something passed here recently, where, or if it was for a company bigger than this, it didn't even apply to those companies. So it's just like, we don't do that here. And the
Mhm.
idea that you want to make sure that the larger companies pay their fair share, or shoulder more of the responsibility, or find more, really is just, it again speaks to the differences between us and them, I guess.
I don't know if we even talked about this on the show, but a few weeks ago, there was proposed legislation coming out of the EU, and this might be what you're talking about, where they want to make the messaging platforms interoperate with each other. So WhatsApp and
That was another piece
iMessage
of
and
it.
Google,
Yep.
they have to talk to each other. And you're right, it only affects if you're
That's
over
what I
a
was.
certain
Yep.
number of
Yep.
users. I think that might
That's
be
what I was talking
what
about.
you're
Yep.
thinking of. And it's like, yeah, we really don't have that over here, because you're saying, well, how are you going to treat this company different than me? It's like, well, because you are a big $1 trillion
Right.
entity, or close to it.
There's a
And
difference.
this is three folks working out of someone's basement or out of her garage. It's different problems for you because of how big you are compared to what we're going to make them go through. That's
Absolutely.
just common sense.
Absolutely. But we
But you
ain't
know what
got
they
that
say,
over here.
sense always ain't always common.
We ain't got that.